Hi everyone, my name is Mark, and this is my Guilty Gear Strive Zato starter guide. So just a quick intro, I've been playing fighting games for a few years now. I started with Tekken 7, but quickly switched to maining Dragon Ball FighterZ. And now I'm focusing on Guilty Gear Strive. I post a lot of tech on Twitter, so you can check me out there. Anyways, I've been getting a lot of messages recently asking for a Zato starter guide. It seems that there's a lot of content out there, but it mostly just focuses on Zato's moves without actually helping people get started or understand the character's game plan. So this guide will be a good middle ground. I'll assume that you understand basic fighting game concepts, but I'll try to give you guys enough information to immediately start working on your Zato without wasting time sifting through tech videos. This won't cover everything. You shouldn't have any issues filling in the gaps afterwards as new situations come up in your own gameplay. Okay, so let's get started with Zato and Eddie's control scheme. So as you guys know, Zato performs his moves when you press down buttons, and Eddie performs his moves when you release buttons. This is called negative edge. So no matter what controller you play on, you'll need to be able to hold down any number of buttons besides dust at any given time. You'll also need to be able to press dust while holding down kick or slash, since those buttons gatling into dust. If you're on an arcade stick or hitbox, which is what I'm playing on, then I would recommend punch, slash, and heavy slash on top row, and kick, RC, dust on the bottom row. This is pretty standard. It's what I use. I also use my pinky for dash macro on the top row. But you can use whatever you want, but make sure you leave enough buttons playing for play and record, because you're going to be doing a lot of that in training mode to test your setups. Now, if you're on a pad, things get a lot trickier. So going off of PlayStation buttons, well, first of all, okay, if you're on a pad, Beautiful Dude just released his default pad guide. So, Beautiful Dude, he's a veteran, he's awesome. I love the stuff he does. But that's kind of spooky to me, just from what I've seen that Zato can do in Strive. If you're looking for something else that may be, I guess, a little more accessible, then I would try this layout that I'm about to suggest. So going off the PlayStation layout buttons, my suggest would be to leave punch on square and kick on X, and I would put slash on your right shoulder button and heavy slash on your right shoulder trigger right under it. So both of those up here. And I would move dust to O right next to kick. So this layout, in my opinion, meets all your requirements comfortably. I'm not a pad player though. So because you can easily hold down punch, kick, slash, and heavy slash at the same time if you need to. You can also hold down kick on X with the knuckle of your thumb and roll to dust on O. You can also hold down kick on X, again with the knuckle of your thumb, and press P on square with the tip of your thumb. So all in all, I think that game plan, that layout would be like fully functional in Strive, if you're looking for that. Of course, what I say doesn't matter. You should obviously use whatever's comfortable for you. But if you don't know what you're doing and you want to try out, you want to start somewhere, I would try that layout. Okay, so now with that out of the way, we can start talking about gameplay. So the thing that helped me the most is realizing that Zato works a lot like a stance character, kind of like Leo with extra steps. Eddie seems overwhelming at first, but you quickly realize that there aren't that many different situations you could find yourself in. They often just loop back into each other. So the main stances, I guess, you would find yourself in is solo Zato with Eddie unsummoned, Eddie summoned right next to you or right in front of you, Eddie oppose on top of you, sandwich pressure stance where Eddie is on the other side of the opponent compared to you, and same side pressure stance where you and Eddie are kind of desynced but on the same side, taking turns hitting the opponent. Now I'll go over all your basic options and objectives in each of these stances. Before we get into all of that, let's first talk about Zato's win condition. For the most part, your main win condition will be mixing the opponent with close range, strike throw, high-low, and cross-up pressure. Almost all of his hits loop back into a mix-up situation on Oki if you have the meter to spend on his Sun Void super. His alternate win condition is baiting the opponent to attack into oppose, then punishing them with a throw or counter hit combo. In order to enforce our mix-ups, we need to be able to either set up gapless block strings or frame traps to disincentivize the opponent from jumping and mashing. I'll show you where all of Zato's frame trap points are so that you can build your pressure around them. Our first stance is solo Zato. Our main objective here is to summon Eddie and get him into one of the other stances. So by himself, Zato has poor movement speed, poor meterless damage, huge hurt boxes on all his normals like this and this. So it's important to try to get Eddie out and play as effectively as possible. Otherwise, you're going to be a gimped character. So the most direct way to summon Eddie is after a knockdown. So your most common knockdowns are going to be 2D like this, where you can empty summon Eddie and meaty them. Corner throw, same concept. That counts as a knockdown. You can meaty them with Eddie. Sun Void, which is this sword super. So if you end a combo in Sun Void, then Eddie gets summoned right next to them, and you can do the same setup. A wall break super, actually. So if you do this at the end of your combo and Sun Void breaks the wall, then you can actually you can meaty them with Frog and a few other things. I think you can empty summon Pierce, or you can run up and meaty 5H. Now, the thing about Strive, unlike Dragon Ball FighterZ and pretty much any other fighting game you've probably played, is that there's no air tech. There's no ground tech. You can't tech out of combos. So stuff that doesn't look like a knockdown is actually still a knockdown. So something as simple as just buttons into RC. Buttons into red RC. This, believe it or not, that's a knockdown. So you can do something like this. And there you go. You got Eddie out. So when Zato has meter and he can spend some meter on Eddie, some meter on RC, he actually gets a little scarier. He can start his game plan a lot easier than before. So now you don't always have to summon Eddie into a knockdown situation. If you're near the wall, for example, you can do jabs. Oops, let me move OBS out of the way. Okay. Yeah, see, there you go. So you can spin your RC and go ahead and get a wall break that way. Another really common way to go straight into a combo is anytime you can Gatling into 5H. So for example, if you hit them with something like this, that's a pretty common starter. Or really more realistically, you're going to make them block close slash, and then you'll frame trap with 2S 5H. But it doesn't work if you actually hit them with close slash. But yeah, there we go. So as you can see, the purple Roman cancel will actually slow them down long enough to make the 2 hits of Pierce combo into each other. So that's another common way of converting a hit with solo Zato into advantageous situation. Like I mentioned before, Zato's moves aren't exactly the best in the cast, his buttons that is. So you're going to want a little bit of help from Eddie to approach the opponent in a lot of situations. So one common situation is when you're outside of your opponent's effective range. And I know a lot of characters in this game have basically infinite effective range with Night Raid Vortex, RC, and all that other stuff. But if you don't think your opponent is likely to go in, if you think they're holding back, then you can empty summon Zato from a distance. Empty summon Eddie from a distance and threaten him that way. So let me go ahead and explain my basic control scheme for summoning Eddie. You can summon Eddie without holding any buttons down, but due to the way Negative Edge works, now if you press a button, if you want Eddie to do something right away, you're going to have to press a button with Zato, and that'll cause him to whiff, and then you won't get the maximum frame advantage from Eddie using his move and you chasing behind it. Now there's ways around that without pressing any buttons down, and they'll come up. I'll explain it later, but for the most part, what you want to do is when I empty summon, I continue to hold down the heavy button. Now I do this for 2 reasons. First of all is you can let go of the button to quickly threaten oppose. Now when you do this, oppose comes out in 8 frames. So it's not like a Dragon Ball FighterZ parry. You're not playing Jiren out here. You can't just react to stuff willy-nilly with a pose. It's not that good. But if you see your opponent approaching you, or you make a read on some sort of advancement, then you can shield yourself and get a punish that way. So that will often come up. For example, in if you empty summon and you see them in the air, you can go into a counter hit combo as such, because it will completely shield your hurt boxes. Zato's buttons were designed around being used behind Eddie's shield. This is all hurt box, this is all hurt box, but once you have Eddie out, all of a sudden these become like, soul far slash, right? So the other reason why I hold down H while controlling Eddie is because it lets me use a faultless defense trick to get Eddie to use moves. So you could hold down all the buttons like I'm doing right now, and just let go of the one that you want. But the problem with that is then now I don't have the option to use the Zato button. Now I have to use Eddie first, so it's limiting me in the same way. Also, if you hold down any two buttons, so say I hold down all of them, and I try to move Zato backwards, I'm going to get faultless defense. Now, that's actually what we're going to abuse in this particular stance. So we have Eddie summoned out here. I'm only holding down one button, so I can freely move me and Eddie. I can move us both down together so that I'm ready to threaten a pose. I can also move Eddie out in front, and then shield in front of me, and chase behind him, and start my offense that way. But then what it also lets me do is I can use the faultless defense trick to get Eddie to use his move without Zato whiffing a move by pressing back plus the other button that I want. So say I want Pierce to come out. I'll empty summon Eddie, I'll hold down H, I'll tap back and punch, and now Zato won't whiff anything. He'll just get faultless defense. That has no recovery. So I can use the move and then immediately start chasing down the opponent. So this is really an important concept. You empty summon Eddie and you hold down H. I think this is the best way you can do it. There's going to be some other situations where your opponent jumps out of a setup and you'll be holding a button that's not H, and you're going to still use the exact same concept. Like, for example, say you have Eddie out, they got hit, and for whatever reason you can't combo, and say you were now you're holding down S, since that's the last thing you did. Well, now you can still hold down S and use the exact same trick to get whatever move you want. So this is something that you guys will be using a lot. So as I mentioned before, the different tricks you're going to be doing with him when you empty summon, typically you're going to want to advance him. And if you think your opponent's going to try to snipe him, because your opponent's always going to be trying to kill Eddie, then you can go ahead and shield right away, and now you have a few different options. You can whiff Drunkard Shade to send him out right away, and that is going to give Eddie iframes, and that'll get around projectiles and any sort of buttons that your opponent might stick out. It also pushes them really far and can set up sandwich situations. For example, if you're really far away from the opponent, you're going to get same side, which is fine because you can do something like this and then chase it down and unsummon. But if you're a little bit closer to the opponent, what you're going to do is, you're going to set up this sandwich situation, which is another one of the stances that we'll be talking about. Another thing you can do is you can move them forward and then use another one of your forward moving Eddie moves to advance. And I'll talk about a pose later, but for the most part, that's what you can be doing. You can also just, summon, chill a little bit, and use it as a poke, or as an anti-air. You see your opponent jump at you and anti-air him. So this is a really useful stance that you guys are going to be using a lot. Okay, so the next way you're going to be summoning Eddie is by canceling out of Zato's buttons. So I'm going to explain to you probably what the best cancel options are for each of Zato's buttons, and this will give me an opportunity to talk about Zato's different moves as well. So what I consider the most fundamental special cancel that Zato has is going to be 5H into Pierce, 236P. Now this is really important because this is the only Gatling, well, this and this are the only Gatlings that, or the only special cancels, excuse me, that frame trap the opponent into an Eddie move. So as I mentioned before, frame traps are the cornerstone of Zato's mix-ups. They're extremely important because when you can threaten a frame trap, your opponent's not going to be jumping, they're not going to be mashing, so then you can go for other stuff that maybe has a bigger gap but is going to give you a much bigger reward on block or on hit. So it's Zato's kind of slow in the air and on the ground, so it's not going to be super realistic to just run up and 5H them. Probably the most common way you're going to be Gatling into this is from flight. So his flight, he is free to move. He can control up and down, left, right. So you have a lot of options to bait anti-air. So it can be quite difficult for your opponent to pin you down. So for example, you do this, bait an anti-air and come back down, and you can go ahead and Gatling. Oops, opponent's set to hit. You can go ahead and Gatling any of these. Well, I guess it's not Gatling. You get plus frames from making them block the jump in, and then you can go ahead and Gatling that into 5H and 236B. So that's going to be one of the, I guess, most important ways that you set up Pierce and set up your offense in general. Now, another one of his good buttons is 2S and far slash. They serve pretty similar roles. So they're good pokes, but they have huge hurt boxes. But you know, against a lot of the casts, you'll be able to challenge with these buttons in mid range. So he can't frame trap with Eddie from here. So even Eddie's fastest move will not frame trap. Your opponent will be able to jump out of this. So that is where Frog becomes really important. So just because you can't frame trap doesn't mean you have no tools for dealing with jump. If you think your opponent's going to jump from a max range 2S, you can go ahead and use Frog. And if you think they're going to stand on the ground, you have other options for making your opponent block on the ground. So it's really going to be between Pierce and Frog. So this seems like just a purely rock, paper, scissors situation, but actually, in general, each one of Zato's moves can cover multiple of your opponent's options that they might go for. Like, for example, at this range, your opponent can only really challenge this with, like the button they can challenge it with is probably going to be something like a far slash, right? So far slash is probably going to be a little too slow to punish Pierce, and Pierce will probably hit. So the way they're going to deal with Pierce is most likely by jumping, and you can beat, jumping with this. But then, as you can see, if your opponent just blocks, if they choose to wait, both of these options still do a pretty good job of covering the opponent on block. So it's really, each one has 2 or 3 different scenarios where they can cover 2 or 3 different things that the opponent might do. So it's typically in your favor to get pressure off of these far poke moves. Now, as we get closer and closer to the opponent, for example, challenging with 2P, 5P, or challenging with your kicks, all of a sudden it becomes a lot scarier because now your opponent can challenge with faster buttons that may even be able to punish canceling straight into Pierce. So I'll just go ahead and talk a little bit about his punch buttons. They have pretty huge range. I mean, for pokes, I think for a character like Zato, they're really reliable, but they are 6-frame buttons. So that comes with all the implications of having a slow button on defense for getting out of pressure. Again, he can't frame trap. The other good thing is his 5P will always hit on crouchers, which is really nice. You never have to worry about whiffing. This is a pretty amazing anti-air as well. It's like what you'll be using to anti-air Foundry Arc, for example. You can pretty much do that on reaction. So it's actually a really nice anti-air in that respect. So they're really good buttons for checking the opponent, and when you have RC, they lead to knockdown or wall break combos on hit. So it can be quite annoying to challenge Zato. But like I was mentioning before, no way to frame trap, and at this range, you can just get mashed on sometimes. So this is where oppose comes in. If your opponent is, they're Gorilla, they're playing Soul, they're playing Leo, they see you press punch, and they said there's absolutely nothing that Zato could do that could possibly threaten me off of a punch, so they're going to mash far slash or something crazy and ruin your day. Then what you can do is you can cancel into a pose. That will basically stuff anything the opponent can throw out that's not like a super or an RC that would kill Eddie. So out of this, the only issue is that now when you only have 1 second to cancel out of a pose, so you gotta think fast. So the ways I like to cancel out of a pose from this distance, when I was far away, I was, usually just do Drunkard Shade to get, Eddie a little closer to the opponent or something like that. But when you're this close, Drunkard Shade is really risky because even though you give Eddie iframes, you're not giving yourself iframes. They can just see you whiff Drunkard Shade and then just hit you. They're going to hit you with the same button they were going to hit you with anyway before you called, if you wouldn't have called a pose, right? So you can't do this, right? This is not, you can, but only if your opponent's absolutely just, respecting you. Now, things you can do, you can run up. You can run up, and as long as you make them block this move, oh wow, I guess. Yeah, see, as long as they block that move, then it's fine. That's actually a true block string if they block that move. But probably your opponent, when they see a pose come out, you want to act as quickly as possible, right? To try to lock them down. So what I like to do is I like to stick out a button and then cancel out of that. So if you stick out a button and cancel the button into Drunkard Shade, it's a lot safer than just using Drunkard Shade by itself, especially since it pushes the opponent out a little bit. Certain buttons can give you really big counter hit combos. Let me see if I can set this up. Oops, he's still blocking. If you get a counter hit with this, that will combo. Yeah, there we go. See, as you can see, if you hit them with the right move, you can get a pretty massive counter hit combo. But again, this is not got the best range. It's not the fastest move, so I would consider poking with a punch or with slash, far slash, or 2S, and then canceling out of that. So you don't have to cancel into Drunkard Shade. You can also cancel into your forward moves and then run them down and try to pressure them that way. So 2K again has the same special cancel implications as your punch moves. It's also a pretty fast low. It's only -3 on block. It's got really good frame data, so in setups, if your opponent is guarding, you can get away with murder doing stuff like this and command grabbing the opponent because it's not very negative on block. So like I mentioned, same special cancel principles out of Eddie, but the other advantage of 2K is that it gatlings into dust, which is a really good way to punish the opponent. Like for example, if your opponent, say Soul is doing far slash pressure, you can, instead of just mashing with punch out of it, you can challenge with 2K 2D, get a knockdown, and then start running your Eddie pressure. Now 2D by itself also has its own pretty unique implications as a block string or poke starter, because 2D, first of all, it's your 10 frame punish. So if your opponent does move this within 2D range that's more than -10 on block, it's more reliable than worrying about whiffing. Sometimes if you hit them with 2K, then 2D will whiff, but if you go straight for 2D, then you'll get the punish and can go straight into Eddie. But its implications as a poke are really nice, because on counter hit, let me set this up, crouch, no guard. On counter hit, it combos, oops, you didn't get counter hit. On counter hit, it combos into your Eddie specials. It's a launcher, it trips him off the ground, and the time freeze will literally combo into a wall break. So that's actually really nice in certain situations If you frame trap into dust, for example, if you do close slash and frame trap into dust, then you can get some really nice stuff for midstream. Also, if you just use it as a poke, it can be good too. Because if your opponent doesn't get counter hit, from max range, if you go straight into this, that will meaty their wake up. And it's hard to time, but if you whiff Drunkard Shade and get a pierce behind the opponent, then that will actually combo off of the spike and launch them on hit. And of course, if they block it, it's gapless on block, and you can start pressure as well. So now let's talk about Eddie's jump buttons. So we'll just go ahead and start with jump P. It comes up fast and has a lot of active frames in the air. It's really good for air-to-airing the opponent. I'll set the opponent to jump, and you can see. So this is really good when it doesn't give you great return on hit. Maybe if you RC it. I actually haven't messed around with that. But it's really good at just preventing your opponent from challenging you in the air. And it pushes them back. And on block, it actually, if you air dash it, you can gapless prevent the opponent from jumping again. So it's actually a really good way to start pressure. If you land this move, you can really prevent your opponent from getting away from you. So his next jumping move that I want to talk about is jumping kick. So this is really nice it's good in setups. Like for example, when they block this, you have a bit of a RPS situation. You know, you can back off, but then you can also air dash in and go for a high, or you can down flight and go for a low, things like that. So jump kick is your go-to mix-up option when you're looking for a fast overhead in mix-ups. It's also Gatlings into jump dust. So you can do high-low setups like this. Like this would hit high-high, and this is hit high-low. They're both gapless. And if you have Eddie out, then both of them would combo into pierce and lead to mix-ups or lead to damage that way. So that's the purpose, mainly what you're going to be using jumping kick for. I don't use it a ton in neutral. Now, jumping slash, on the other hand, is a really good neutral tool. It's nice because it has a cross-up hitbox. So when you're flying at the opponent at weird angles and you don't know what they're going to do, jumping S is your most reliable way. You're not going to be worried about the opponent getting, you know, under you or around you. It's really tricky for baiting the opponent, especially if your opponent doesn't have a flash kick. Like if they're trying to DP you and they don't know what side, you're hovering right over them. You don't know what side they're going to be on. They're moving around too. You don't know what side they're going to be on. Jumping S can be a really good tool to come down on them with. Jumping heavy is I think it's your go-to jump in. It's got the largest hitbox and it's the most plus on block. And you can get good frame advantage from this. You can use it in instant overhead setups. You can't do it on Kai, but if you hit it low to the ground, then you can do a rising jumping kick and hit them. I wouldn't go for those setups personally because he's got plenty of other unreactable setups that he can go for that aren't as finicky, but it is an option you can think of or use in your games. Now, jumping dust, I think this is his most interesting move. It is a movement option. He doesn't have a fast air dash. Like, you know, I'm so jealous of all these characters that can just, you know, like just get to you. And I'm like, here, it takes me like 3 times as long to, you know, like Jigglypuff flow over to you. So, but, you know, jumping dust almost makes up for it. I say almost because it has a ton of recovery, like on whiff. Like if you just do it like this, then it's got tons of recovery. Your opponent's just going to hit you out of the air, or they're going to poach you. It has landing recovery too. They're going to poach you when you land. So the way you have to use this is you have to super jump and then hit them with a button on the way down, so you don't like to mitigate the landing recovery. Okay, so this is how you're mainly going to be using this move in neutral. But then it's also got really good implications as a mix-up tool. So, you know, when he gets you in this situation where you're blocking Eddie on the other side, then he can do a very standard. If you play Dragon Ball Fighters, it's like, you know, your Kid Buu mix, it's your Bardock mix. You know, it's just all the mix where you jump in the air. You jump in the air and you either land with a low or you air dash at the last second. But he doesn't have an air dash, you know, that's fast. So instead he'll just do this, and you mix it up with 2K. Oh, and another really important thing about this move is it is one of your best air-to-air combo starters. So if you hit a counter hit, oops, they're blocking. Oops. If you hit this counter hit up close, then you can just go. You can go into a big combo. That can lead into wall break. It can lead into any sort of Oki situation that you are planning on setting up. It's just a great tool overall for air to air. It's what makes the opponent afraid to challenge you in the air. And even if it doesn't counter hit, even on hit or block, you can still just air dash it to start pressure. So I mentioned oppose a lot already. I pretty much already showcased how I use it in when I'm summoning Eddie, but I want to go over the oppose stance, I guess, a little more in depth. So and just reiterate what I've already mentioned and put it all in one place in the guide. So the two main ways I'm getting there, like I said, are I'm going to be empty summoning, and threatening the opponent when they run up to me. You can just keep Eddie next to you and always have this as a 8-frame threat. And then the other way is I'm going to be canceling out of buttons, be it far slash or one of my closer buttons. Now, I personally look for 3 different ways out of this stance. You know, you really don't want to let it time out because that puts Eddie on cooldown for a really long time. You really want to keep Eddie up as often as possible since Zato really can't do very much without Eddie. So you don't want to let it time out. So your 3 main ways to get out without letting it, you know, just Eddie go on cooldown is the first way is to run up and command grab them. So they cannot mash out of this command grab. Eddie will shield any mash attempts. I mean, they can reversal super out of it. They can, well, they can't really throw you out of it either since it's a command grab that should have priority over throw. So yeah, their main way out of this is going to be, I guess Pot could throw you out of it. Okay, that's besides the point. That it's a really good way to exit out of this because the command grab completely refills Eddie on hit. So when you use this command grab, now Eddie is completely refilled. It's not quite a knockdown situation. Actually don't know the frame data exactly. I know it can be very difficult or maybe impossible to meaty them, but you're in a situation where you can challenge them with one of your faster moves and cancel into Eddie, and that can be advantageous. Now, the other way I mentioned when you're in this stance is to stick out a button and then special cancel out of that. You're either going to special cancel into Drunkard Shade, or you're going to special cancel directly into an Eddie special. So that's just a really good way to get Eddie out, to keep you safe from mashing, but then to also start your pressure. It will use a lot of your Eddie gauge, so you won't get much of a mix-up. But then what you can do is you can aim for an unsummon route. So anytime, it doesn't matter, even if you're at the last little speck of Eddie gauge, if you unsummon, it'll basically instantly fill your Eddie meter, and then you can continue pressuring them from there. Now, something... Oh, yeah. What did I say? Yeah, so the third out you're going to have for this stance, okay? And this goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning. If they jump at you, this is your main use for this. You're going to have Eddie pretty much probably just like empty summoned, right? You see them jump in the air, you activate Eddie, okay? Because it only has a 1 second uptime, right? So they're not going to jump at you if they see Eddie out. But if you have it empty summoned, they might jump at you, and you just let go, and you get a counter hit 2H. Now this move is your God move. I mean, it just chunks their health. It'll build a full bar of meter, and with that bar, you can go into Sun Void Sword Okazemi, is what I call it. And that is one of your best setups. It leads to a lot of pressure on block and wake up and 50-50 setups. It's really scary situation for your opponent since they already are so low on life. So this is one of your main win conditions, is baiting the opponent into this and getting a counter hit 2H. Now, when I go for counter hit 2H, I don't use any option selects. So something really important you need to learn about about counter hits and Eddie is that counter hit will negate any negative edge inputs that you do while you have while during the counter hit freeze. So this is really frustrating at first because you'll go for your negative edge setup, Eddie just won't do anything. Now you're not holding down any buttons. So getting Eddie to do something now requires you to whiff a Zato button, and you don't know what you're doing, and then you get hit, and you drop your combo. It's horrible, okay? But once you realize that this actually lets you option select and get exactly the Eddie special you need in different situations, that can be a really strong tool. So for this particular setup with 2H, I was option selecting it, but I don't do that anymore, mainly because it's very height and spacing dependent. I want a little more control over when I call Eddie. So what I do is when I do I always do 2H into Drunkard Shade. And when I cancel into Drunkard Shade, I hold down S. And so if I see that they just got hit, then I let go of S pretty much immediately. If I saw that they got counter hit pretty high, then I hold S and I let go to summon Frog. I let go to summon I let go to summon Frog like that as they start to fall. Once they start falling, that's usually when it's safe to do that. And then if I hit them with a counter hit 2H low to the ground, let me see if I can set this up. No guard. I'll make them stand. Force the counter hit. Then you see the counter hit will combo into Drunkard Shade. Now this makes it so you have to call Frog pretty much right away if you see that that's going to happen. You can still combo it, but it just changes the timing. So these are the things that you're going to have to get used to with this setup. Now I think I already showcased it, the 5H counter hit. Now what I like to do with this one is I like to option select between Pierce and Frog because you don't have enough time to react to that as a counter hit. So what I do is so what I do is I like to I'll press 5H and then I'll do Drunkard Shade and I'll tap punch then slash, okay? And so the punch will come out if it's not a counter hit, like for example if they just block it. Let me see if I can show you what that looks like. And then you can start sandwich pressure that way. That's a sandwich pressure starter. But then if they get hit, then Frog will come out and I can go for, you know, my full combo. Since I just showcased it, I think this is a good time to talk about sandwich pressure. So this will be your next stance, your sandwich pressure stance, if you like to think of it like that. Now the properties of sandwich pressure is that it gives you rapid fire mix-ups. It's not spacing dependent, and once they're in it, they're in it. You know, you can just keep running it, and it loops back into itself on block and on hit with Sword Oki if you have the meter. Now, how do you get there? You can get there from 2D knockdown. I'll show you the setup. Make sure the opponent's not blocking. No guard. Don't want them to get counter hit either. So that's the setup, okay? Now, let's just unpack this, okay? Because people ask me all the time, they struggle with this setup, okay? So there's a few different ways to do it. I like to do 2K 2D, and then I empty summon, and then I hold down, forward, and kick at the same time. Now, the reason why I hold down forward and kick, you don't have to hold down anything, but then if you don't hold down anything, then you can't do this. Okay, and the reason why you would want to do that is because a lot of invincible supers, like Ram's super, which, okay, you know, if invincible supers, some of them are so wild, they will literally punish your meaty drill. I mean, it doesn't look like it could possibly be punishable, but Ram super can punish that from that distance. So against characters who have wake up supers like that, you know, when you get a knockdown, you're not going to have time to think, oh, do they have meter for super? You know, you want to be in a situation that gives you as many options as possible. So I like to hold down forward kick. That gives me that option. Now, if I want to get the meaty drill, which is going to buy me enough time to get Eddie on the other side of them, and it meaties and it catches backdash. It's just really good in general. If I want to do that, I still need to be moving Eddie forward as much as possible. So I'm holding down forward kick, okay? So I'm already holding down forward. So to get drill, I don't need to press down twice. I'm already holding down. I just go back to neutral, and then I press down H. Now, as soon as I press down H, you can't press down forward H. You have to press down H. As soon as I've pressed down H, then I plink back to forward. So I press, like, I'm holding down forward. I go to neutral for, like, as little time as possible. I press down H, plink to down forward, and I'm... You know, Eddie's at this point, Eddie can act. So you have to, now I'm holding down kick and I'm holding down heavy. And then I let go of kick when I want to. Then you get Eddie spikes and you can run your setup. Okay? So on hit, you get a combo. But if they block, all of a sudden, they're sandwiched. You also can go for punch instead. So again, I always start with holding down forward kick. But instead, I'm holding down kick and heavy, and I tap punch. And because you can't, you know, Zato's not in recovery, so you can tap whatever button. Zato is in recovery from drill, so you can tap whatever buttons you want. I'll tap punch, and then now I'm in my standard starter for sandwich. For sandwich setups. Now, other ways to get into it is with Sun Void. So let me go ahead and show you that. I'll set the opponent to get hit. I'll show you the setup. Oops, he's not getting hit. So it's from any sandwich combo like that. So that is the setup. So it looks similar to what we did before, but the button presses are actually kind of different. So what you're going to do is anytime you have that frog that hits them back into you. Frog is a double hitting move, same as Pierce, okay? Except for it can actually combo into itself in certain situations, in most situations actually. But what you want to do is it's inconsistent. Sometimes it'll cause the opponent to fly over your head. So anytime frog is coming back at you, what you want to do is you want to sandwich the two hits of frog with 2H. And you can special cancel your 2H into Sun Void. Now that setup will cause Sun Void to hit them at your feet. And you can then combo that into 2D and cancel 2D into drill. So again, it's the same concept as holding down forward kick. Except for instead, we press down forward dust, we hold down forward, and we do the exact same special cancel into drill, and then I just tap kick, since we're not already holding it down. And that's the best way you can set it up. It moves Eddie further out, and it's the exact same starter. Again, you can tap punch instead, and that will start your standard sandwich pressure starter as well, and I'll show you all of that. Now, another way, I'm sure you've seen me do this several times at this point, another way you can get into sandwich pressure is by just canceling any of your, anytime you're near Eddie, you can just get Eddie near the opponent, on the other side of the opponent by whiffing Drunkard Shade, and then again, I just tap, I'll explain this. when I do Drunkard Shade, Zato's in recovery, so I don't have to worry about him whiffing anything. And I don't have to hold anything down. You just tap what you want. If you want, pierce there. If you think they're gonna jump, you can sandwich with frog. Okay? If you, I don't know, if you want this, you can do that too. So that's another way to set up sandwich pressure in neutral and on block. And if the Drunkard Shade is blocked, then it's gapless. It's gapless into pierce, and then gapless into 5p. So it's a really good way to start pressure. Oh, and then one other way to set up sandwich pressure is going to be from certain same side routes. I'll cover them in the same side section. I'll go ahead and showcase them now. So that's going to be your most common one. It's your bread and butter 5H into 236P. And you have enough recovery on Eddie to press kick and let go of kick, and then press dust and let go of dust. Dust doesn't have an Eddie move, so it won't trigger him. And then you can cancel that into drill and go from there. Another route that you can do is let me see if I can set up. Is that if you fly over their head, then you can go for a side switch cross up there. So the way that works is the dust will fly over their head. You call Eddie P as you're flying over their head, and Eddie will hit them after you've already crossed over. So it's actually cross up because before you've even landed, Eddie's already hitting you cross up. And you always have to block away from Zato. You just completely ignore where Eddie is. So that's a really nice mix-up, and it's a good way to get into sandwich pressure stance. So now that we've talked about how to get into sandwich pressure, let's go ahead and talk about the anatomy of the sandwich pressure stance. So it's always going to start with a sandwich pierce. So Eddie using pierce from the other side. And what you're going to do is pierce has a mashable gap. What you need to do is you need to fill this gap with micro dash 5p. So this is one reason why I use the dash macro button, even though I'm on hitbox and have no issues dashing on command. I do it because I'm dashing so much, it's a lot more comfortable and there's less room for error if you just plink the dash macro button into 5p. So it's always going to start with pierce there. I plug that gap, making it completely gapless, and now I'm like plus a lot right there in front of their face. So there's going to be two mix-up variants. You can mix up off of two cycles or two different points in the cycle of the sandwich pressure. There's the 5p mix-up variants, and then there's the close slash mix-up variants, and they have their pros and cons. So the first one is going to be 5p. Your main threat in this pressure is an instant tick throw command grab. Basically on the first frame that they recover, you can use this move. So if you do it correctly, they can't really mash out of it. They really have to jump out of it. I'm not sure if they can DP out of it either. They can use a reversal super, that's for sure. And they can probably backdash it. But it's very hard to deal with this because his other moves are really punishing against those defensive options. So that's our first threat. So our second threat is going to be a gapless low, unreactable. So if you do it as soon as possible, you can make 2k or 5k be gapless. It is not always going to be gapless. In fact, any time you go to like the second round of the loop or off of certain starters, if you're late on the microdash 5p, a lot of times you actually won't be able to make it gapless, but it will always be a frame trap. And it's likely to be gapless. So it's really risky for your opponent to challenge you at this point, especially on the first mix-up. So the way you convert the way you convert 5k or 2k back into the setup is just combo it into Drunkard Shade. And this is why it's so important to micro dash 5p, because that's going to get you close enough to combo into Drunkard Shade. You also have a slow overhead option. So 5p does Gatling into 6k. So there's no real reason to use this since it's strictly riskier than going for command grab. But it does give you slightly better return since you actually can combo into Sun Void Oki if you want, or combo into a wall break. Whereas if you were to just do this, you'd have to spend RC to get a wall break or a setup. So I'll show you what that looks like. There you go. And now they're back in the loop. So let me go over what the hit confirms look like. I just showed you there, but what it's going to look like is, oops, keep doing this. You hit confirm off of the 5p. So if you see that Pierce hit, there's no way 5p would hit. If Pierce was blocked, then it's going to be gapless. But if you see that Pierce hit, then you go into close slash and 2H. Now, while I'm pressing close slash, I'm really, instead of pressing 5S, I'm pressing 3S. I'm pressing, well, no, not 3. I'm pressing 6S. I'm pressing forward and close slash. And then instead of pressing 2H, I'm pressing 3H because I want to be moving Eddie forward for the entire duration of the setup to get them where get Eddie where he needs to be to use Frog to push them back into me. Now your other mix-up option is off of close slash. So again, you're gonna do 5p, and then sometimes it'll be gapless into close slash, but realistically it's gonna be a frame trap into close slash. So you're gonna go into close slash, and now you have a lot of options out of this. Your main option is going to be sweep, which can be made gapless, but close slash is the main button where you can delay cancel out of it. So if your opponent is trying to fuzzy guard between that and your overhead options, then you can delay sweep to catch any fuzzy guard attempts. So they have to react to all of this. So the first option is this. I'll show you what it looks like on hit. Sweep is a launcher. And all combos like that. You have a fast overhead in dust. And I'll show you what that looks like. Oops. Oops. There you go. So you have that setup off of your high and low. That alone is scary enough. I mean, this is a 20 frame overhead. I mean, good luck blocking that on PlayStation 5, right? So that alone could probably carry you, but he's got more. You could also go for an armored grab if your opponent is really looking out for those options. Now, this is a little bit tricky to set up. I mean, they can't mash out of it. You are delay canceling this into a pose, so I guess if they're really, really, really mashing, they can probably hit before a pose is active. But, no one's going to do that since close slash into dust is a frame trap. It frame traps jump, it frame traps buttons, so they're not liable to be mashing there. But you can go for close slash into a pose and get an armored grab. Now, doing that, the thing is, close slash gatlings into 5H, right? In fact, it gatlings into every single one of your H options. So there's no route you can go to that will prevent you from gatling. So when you do this one, you need to plink from S to H. You plink from slash to heavy, and that way you're pressing H before your cancel window even starts up, and that's how you get this to come out. I was mentioning this cross-up mix-up. You can do that from the same side. Sorry. you can do that from sandwich pressure. So the thing is, we are sandwiched, so it's a little contradictory. Eddie's basically exactly inside the opponent. So what I can do is I jump back. I jump, close slash is jump cancelable, so I'll jump back and then do this. The act of jumping back, I'm holding back for a little bit, so Eddie will move to where I was, and then as I'm crossing over with jump dust, I call pierce and go to the setup. I'll show you what it looks like again. Oops. Oh my god. And if that wasn't enough, you get literally another round of it, another round of mix, if they somehow block the cross up, and then you can end with a tick throw. So, you know, if that cross up wasn't enough, he's got an even stronger one. So this is by far his, like, what I'm about to show you, his break the law mix. This is true 50-50, just completely unseeable, unblockable cross up. The only thing about it is, you know, your other mix is already good and reliable, and your opponent's probably going to use some defensive option here anyway, and it does leave a gap. It's not a frame trap. But if you're playing against Guichi, you know, and they're trying to react to everything, then this is what you're going to hit them with. So what you do is, this time we're going to do close slash, and we're going to delay pierce. Okay, we're going to delay cancel into pierce late in the active frames of close slash. And what we're going to do is we're going to break the law and go under them in between the hits of pierce. So the first hit of pierce will hit same side, and the second hit of pierce will hit cross up. So I'll show you what that looks like. Oops. And if they, by some stroke of luck, block that, then you still get a tick throw setup afterwards. So this is, I think it's Zato's coolest mix. I think it looks incredible. If they get hit by the second hit of pierce, then you're going to do this into frog instead of pierce, and then that will combo into this. And of course, anytime you have frog into that, you can go for Sun Void Oki and go right back into it. So I just showed you pretty much all the mix you can do off of sandwich pressure. I'm sure there's other stuff you can layer, you know, kind of unique options, but that's going to be your standard mix, and that should take you very far in these setups. Let's go over some quick pros and cons to the different sandwich pressure variants. So the main issue with the 5P variant is that it is weak to faultless defense. So I'll go ahead and show you. If your opponent is faultless defensing, then this will whiff after 2K. So faultless defense obviously wouldn't matter on the first hit because you are canceling right away. It wouldn't matter on the first hit because you're already right next to them, because the faultless defense isn't going to push them away when Eddie's, you know, pushing them back into you. So if they get hit by the first mix, you know, the first tick throw, it's not a big deal. But the problem is if they guess right, if they're just holding faultless defense, then they'll know that you're going to whiff Drunkard Shade, and they can punish with like their best combo starter. So that's going to be the main issue with that. So if I were to do this, mainly do this one, like I would prioritize the tick throw. If I'm going for this, I would prioritize the tick throw. I wouldn't actually do this option very often, simply because it's weak to faultless defense. And it's not really high-low, right? The main benefit of this is that this was a gapless low, right? It can be a gapless low, or it can be a frame trap. But you can still catch people jumping with frame trap close slash. So the close slash really is the mix. It's a mix between the command grab and close slash, which is your frame trap. But it's always nice to mix in different options. If you absolutely need a gapless option, then you can dice roll with that. Like if you know they're not faultless defensing, if you know they're just mashing super or something, then you can go for this variant. Now, the advantage is that it's just it's really fast and it's really hard to react to. So the close slash mix variant, it gives you better return on hit, in my opinion, because you know, getting hit by dust and all of that, I think leads to better damage, especially if they get hit by sweep. You're not scaling the combo so much with all those punches and drunkard, all the small hits and the small hit starters. So if they're standing and they get hit by the sweep, it just seems like you get a lot better damage. You know, it's chunking them for like half their health off of those hits. So I think that's good. You can loop in Faultless Defense. Faultless Defense will not actually push them away from you. Or it will, but you can manage in Faultless Defense for more iterations. So as you can see, you know, if they're keen on Faultless Defensing, you can just basically burn all their meter by going for this setup instead of the other 5P setup. And it also gives you more opportunities to mix your opponent with, you know, a variety of different moves. Even though it's not as unreactable as a 5P command grab, dealing with this, you have so many different options that your opponent has to look for. You know, they're liable to get hit in these sort of setups. Now, I think it's major weakness over just mixing off of 5P. I think the major weakness is that it gives your opponent more opportunities to YRC. And also it gives them an opportunity to react to your overheads and react to your cross-ups. So, you know, if you're playing against someone who's really good at reacting, or you're playing against someone who's really itching to YRC you, then it may be best to just get your mix-up out of the way as quickly as possible and not give them more opportunities to YRC, because a lot of people are going to be YRCing on close slash anyway. So I saved same side pressure for last because it is the most nuanced in my opinion. So there's a lot of different things you can do in same side pressure, a lot of different implications on different moves that we need to discuss. So I'll try to cover as much as I can here in this section. So as I mentioned before, our bread and butter cancel that we're building our offense around is going to be 5H into 236P. I'm going to go ahead and cover all the different Pierce follow-up setups. So anytime you're special canceling into Pierce, I'm going to go ahead and cover all the different things you can do. So the first one we're going to start with is 5H into 236P. So the thing to know about this is that the first hit of Pierce will frame trap the opponent. So they cannot jump out between 5H and the first hit of Pierce, which is really nice. Now the weakness of this setup is that it has a large mashable gap between the two hits of Pierce. I believe it's a 7-frame gap. So characters with 6-frame buttons, which I think is every character, any character can use their fast buttons to mash out of this gap. Now that sounds like a total deal breaker, right? You said, because you know, in other setups, like for example, if I were to empty summon, then or like for example in sandwich pressure, I'm always able to plug this Pierce gap. Basically every single time I use Pierce, I can always plug it. So in that situation, Pierce is a very strong move. But in this situation where we're just canceling straight into Pierce to get this frame trap, there's no way to plug this gap. Me mashing my my poke as fast as I can still doesn't actually plug the gap. So knowing this, it may seem like this would be an unviable route, but it's not for two main reasons. First of all, it's more difficult to react than you think. So Pierce can come at multiple times in your block string. Like for example, when you're going for 5H, it's not like you're just going for 5H. Very rarely are you going to just poke with this button, right? You're probably gatling out of close slash. Well, you can do close slash into this, right? Or you can do this into delayed Pierce, right? And there's no guarantee you're going to do Pierce at all. And a lot of times you're coming off of a jump in, right? If you do a jump in, you can just do your jump in straight into Pierce, right? So there's so many different places where Pierce could come. It's not always just going to come after 5H. So they really have to be looking for this move to react to. So let's just go over the frame data a little bit. Pierce comes out in 21 frames. It has 3 active frames and then a 7-frame gap. And so if they mash with their fast button, realistically, most characters, they're going to have to react within 24, 25 frames in order to mash the gap. Now, 24 frames, that's like Z Broly's medium command grab in Dragon Ball FighterZ. This is something that, yes, it is reactable. Pros react to it all the time. But it still hits people, and you still have to look for it. And Zato can do like a million other things. It's not like Broly, where it's all you're looking for is the grab, right? There's so much stuff going on in a Zato match that you're really going to be hard-pressed to react to this Pierce gap and mash it every single time. So, in my opinion, this is a viable setup, going for this and then trying to pressure after the second hit of Pierce. Now, the other reason why it's actually a real setup is because you can give Eddie iframes to punish any sort of mash attempt. So I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. Well, let's make it crouching punch. So you can see Kai's punching Eddie, but I can punish it. So as you can see, it is viable because you can always rock, paper, scissors into with Drunkard Shade. So if your opponent is blocking, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you just let it rock or whether you do it with Drunkard Shade. Both are going to lead into pressure. It really forces your opponent to challenge the button, because if they're blocking, either one's going to work. And, you know, if they think they're smart and they mash it, then you can rock, paper, scissors them with iframes. So you can make your opponent respect this setup. Another thing to note is that even though the gap does give the opponent enough time to jump, the second hit of Pierce at close range will actually ground them again. So as you can see, the second hit of Pierce actually brings them back down to the ground. And anytime you block a move in the air, then you actually get even more block stun that you got to deal with. So it actually is pretty safe to jumping, even though it isn't safe to mashing. Now, if your opponent blocks 5H into Pierce, we now need to build a game plan for getting a hit and actually, you know, gatling into a mix-up. So the main tool you want to use is, if you do this gatling, you can frame trap their jump attempt after the second hit of Pierce with dash in 2K. Okay? So now all of a sudden, I told you, frame traps are the cornerstone of Zato's mix-up strategy. Anytime you can frame trap them, then you can go for something else, right? So all of a sudden, we have our first mix-up. You can do that, or you can run up in command grab. Okay? So then, now let's just keep trying to add layers onto this. So after 2K, we can see what it gatlings into. So it gatlings into dust, and gatlings into sweep, and it gatlings into dust, right? So now all of a sudden we have a bit of a high-low mix-up we can go for. So you can go for that, and I'll show you that this does combo on hit. Into wall break, so that's a very good combo starter. And if your opponent knows you're going to go low, then you can go for your 20 frame overhead combo starter into wall break. So it is very strong. I mean, like, you know, just getting someone to block this, basically they only really have one gap that they can mash out of, and then now they have to go high-low. You know, it's quite strong. So the other option he can go for is armored command grab. So if your opponent's trying to mash, because actually this 2K into dust does have a mashable gap. It's not like close. This is a frame trap, but this has a mashable and jumpable gap. So if your opponent is mashing, then you can always mix in an armored tick throw setup, just like that, because 2K is only -3 on block. Now, so I said it's a high-low mix-up, but it's not as good as your close slash mix-ups. The reason being is you cannot delay cancel 2K. You can't delay cancel 2K into another, or delay Gatling 2K into another button. You have to just go right away. So your opponent can fuzzy defend this setup. They can fuzzy defend between 2K 2D and the overhead. So it's not a real setup, but if your opponent doesn't know that, then you can just rob them. I mean, with this setup, it's extremely easy to set up. There's very few ways to kind of get out of it, and you have a lot of really good options that you can go for. Now, of course, you can frame trap after 2K with other options. You can do something like this and get that to hit frame trap, or maybe not frame trap, but it will deal with the fuzzy jump timing. So you can always try to mix in just using 2K and then doing some other Eddie special afterwards. But that's like layer 2, layer 3. At first, you want to focus on your layer 1 mix-ups. All right, so let's keep building on this mix-up. So say we do this. We check them with the low option. It's gapless into spikes. So now we need to see what else we can get off of this. So first of all, you can say, okay, that was enough. We pushed them to the corner. That's good enough. And you can go ahead and unsummon. That will instantly refill your Eddie meter. Now they're in the corner, and they have to deal with Eddie coverage, and they can't really back up. So they have to deal with your pressure. Alternatively, we can dash back in and go for one last mix-up. So let's see what we can get. So we can run up and close slash after spikes. Typically, that's what you're going to want to go for. Now, close slash, unlike 2K, close slash has a lot of things you can go out of. First of all, let's go over its properties. It can cancel into dust. Sorry, it can cancel into sweep. It can cancel into dust. It's jump cancelable. So that gives us a lot of options for mixing up the opponent. And the main thing is you can delay cancel. You can delay cancel it into sweep, so that makes it so that your opponent can't fuzzy guard. They can't just block low, then block high to avoid getting hit by dust. So let's just see what those follow-ups look like. Oops, too many hits. Now off of crouching slash and far slash, so our main pokes, when we Gatling this into 236p, it does not. First of all, it doesn't frame trap into 236p, but then it also doesn't frame trap. We're too far away to frame trap the opponent afterwards with 2K, so we have to go for a different frame trap setup. So assuming they block this into this because they're afraid of your anti-air options, then what we can do is we can dash in and frame trap with far slash or 2S instead. So this can create a few different situations. First of all, you can use it to just return back to neutral. For example, like this, you can do this. And what I did is I pressed far slash and then I plinked into heavy. So now I'm in my other stance that I was talking about, where you and Eddie are on top of each other. Now your opponent is going to see that, oh crap, he stopped attacking me, and they're going to try to do something about it, right? But you got Eddie right here next to you. They got to get past you first. And you're holding down H, so you can just let go and threaten oppose at any time. So it's very common for your opponent to do something like that afterwards. So I'll show you. Bam. Now they're they got a huge chunk of their health taken out for kind of trying to challenge you there. Now, if they don't challenge you, if you kind of train them to kind of wait and see what you're going to do, you can see that they stay on the ground and go for, try to retake your pressure back on your own terms as well. Now, if you don't want to do all that, you want to just frame trap them and keep things kind of a bit tighter, what you can do is you can frame trap their jump attempt after the second hit of Pierce with 2S. And because Eddie recovers fairly quickly after Pierce, then you can just, right after they recover from this, you can go straight into another Pierce. And you can just keep doing that, pushing them to the corner. And you can even unsummon after the first hit of the second Pierce to stop any mash attempts trying to kill Eddie once they realize that that's what you're doing. So, at this distance, you're not really banking on actually getting a mix-up. Your most important objective is just getting closer to them, pushing them in a corner, limiting their options so that you can, continue to play the games on your own term. Now, if you really do want to start pressure off of this, your main option for doing that is to with Drunkard Shade. Of course, this is going to be a big gap, but we just show that you can kind of do some rapid fire frame traps that your opponent's already going to kind of be afraid to jump during these sequences. You can make them afraid, well, not really afraid since this doesn't lead to combos. You can make them not want to jump because they're going to get hit, or at least they're not going to be holding up back. And you can go for something like this. Because you can't jump out of the Pierce gap. Like I said, you sometimes can't mash out of it either because of this. So they're liable to just be blocking. And then now we have a nice tick throw setup that we set up. So you can do that, or you can do this. Oops. And now all of a sudden we have a knockdown. We got Eddie right here. And we can go for more. Actually, I didn't realize Eddie was still up there. So, oh yeah. So we have a really nice tick throw setup that can even lead to Sword Oki if you want. Anytime you hit them with 2H, you can just go straight into Sword Oki. Now, once you've gotten them to respect your gaps, for example, this or this, then you can actually consider empty summoning into Pierce instead. And what this lets you do is it lets you plug gaps that are normally problems for Zato. Two of them at once, actually. So the first main gap that we mentioned is the Pierce gap. So typically we want to plug it if we can. And if you empty summon, then you can plug the Pierce gap with 2S. Now another gap that's problematic is 2S into Drill. And this is another jumpable gap. And actually the second hit of Pierce will plug that gap. So I'll show you on block. Oops. As you can see, those setups kind of plug each other's gaps, and then you can go into Eddie afterwards and go for another mix. So this is mainly applicable in the corner because you can get it to all combo here. Oops. As you can see, if they somehow get hit by Pierce, it will all combo into each other. But even on block, it's a good way to set up spikes right there in front of your face. Because anytime you can get them to block spikes, you can run up with close slash and go for another mix-up. So it'll look something like this. And I'm sure you can wall break too. I think I needed to do that into that. But you can also just go into Sword Super, which is probably what you're going to do anyway at the wall, because you're going to want to get the knockdown after wall break. So it'll look something like this. And then you can run up, dash, and meaty them with 5H. Now, if you're really far away and you're just summoning Eddie to poke, you can always just use Eddie as a poke, because when you summon him like this, And oh yeah, I forgot to mention, you can do this faultless defense trick in the air as well. So, you know, you can like you can tag team with Eddie. You take this guy, he takes the guy. You know, so you can always just use Pierce to poke, and you just unsummon after the first hit. So it's a really versatile move because it's fast and has really good range, and your opponent never knows whether you're going to cancel it or let it fly into some full combo or mix-up. And again, you can use the same trick. If you're poking with it, you can always threaten with Drunkard Shade almost at any point into pressure. And if your opponent likes to jump after they block something, then you know, you can ground them with the frog variant instead. Now that we've covered the utility of Pierce, let's go ahead and discuss spikes and the follow-up pressure you get off of spikes. So let me first go here, get rid of that. Now, the thing about Pierce is you're always worried about this gap in between Pierce. You're either trying frantically to fill it with a button like 5P, or you're dice rolling around the opponent, mashing out of it or not. Now, if you don't want to deal with that kind of pressure, you want something more guaranteed, then spikes is the way to go. If your opponent blocks these, it's gapless in between the 4 hits of spikes, as long as you don't push them out of it. Now, it's really nice, but it has slower startup, so there's no way to frame trap into spikes. Its main utility is going to be you're going to use it after a knockdown situation, or what you can do is you can do this thing called like frame trap doubling up, right? So what happens is if you ever make your opponent block something that is +1 block or leads into a frame trap, then like I said many times already, your opponent's probably not going to mash, right? Because if they're mashing or jumping, they're going to get hit by the frame trap, right? So once you've conditioned your opponent to respect certain situations, then instead of going for the frame trap that they were afraid of in the first place, you can just instead go for spikes, right? So it's going to be a bigger gap that they couldn't necessarily, they could just jump out of. But the thing is, it's probably going to catch them off guard. They can't react to that gap. And if they ever block spikes, then what it does is it lets you run up and land close slash. Now, close slash, I mentioned it during the sandwich pressure situations. Close slash is our best move for mixing up because you can delay cancel into your low, and you can go frame trap into a high, and because it's jump cancelable, so you can go for all sorts of other stuff, and it has a ton of active frames, so you can wait for Eddie to recover during the active frames and go into other moves, and it's pretty ambiguous. Your opponent can't really react to that. So what you can do is, I'll just, for the time being, I'm always going to do this, but it's really off of anything, right? Anytime you think you can get away with it, anytime you think your opponent's going to be respecting you, you can go into spikes. So let's just build out the mix-up kind of strategy you're going for. So we got this. Oops. And of course, we have our layer 1 low. It's a sweep. It chunks their health, leads to wall break. Basically won the round at that point, if you can manage to hit them with that low. Same deal with the dust, right? You get them to block spikes. You go gapless into a 20-frame overhead launcher that wall breaks, and pretty much game over at that point as well. Now, if your opponent can react to the dust, then you're going to have to continue to double up, right? So this is what I was mentioning. Because we're dashing into close slash is, again, the same reason why we were able to get them to respect spikes to begin with. They're already afraid of this frame trap, right? Which leads to that massive combo. So they're going to be respecting this again. What we can do is we can wait out the active frames until Eddie has enough time to catch up and recover. And we'll go into Pierce, okay? And when I'm doing this, I'm holding forward the whole time. So I run up and press forward S because I want Eddie to catch up. And I'll go into delay Pierce, and I'm gonna sandwich that with 2K this time, not 5P. We're gonna go for a low, and I'll show you what it looks like on block. You see? So we're going to sandwich like that after dash. So I do a micro dash into that. Now, if they get hit low, this is actually a launcher. The second hit of Pierce is a launcher. So it looks like this. And you see they got launched. So if I'm near the corner, I can just continue this combo into wall break. Now, if you're not in the corner, you can still combo it. I think you can pick up with multiple different ways. I'll try to show you all of them. Oops, I'm missing the drill. There we go. So yeah, you can combo like that. You can also combo into dust. I'll show you what that looks like. Oops, I didn't even do it. You see? So it is very tricky. So what you can do is you can use this as your high option, and you can use this as your gapless low option if your opponent's a maniac. And if your opponent is trying to react, then all of a sudden now they're in a huge cascade of mix-ups that they're gonna be bombarded with. So I'll show you all the options. Oops, I'm trying to get it to be nice and tight. There we go. So I need to delay the Pierce for a little bit longer. But yeah, so you can make it nice and tight like that, and go for all lows. And I'll show you that this combos as well. It's going to be tough for me to do this. I need to micro the... Okay, that should be enough. You see, so if they stand up, after the first low or the second low, then that'll still launch, and you can convert that into wall break as well. Now, you can go straight into low high, and I'll show you what it looks like if they get hit by that. And there you go. You got a wall break off of that as well. Yeah, so it basically just sets up a really tough situation to block. Now, the other good thing about this is the way that Eddie and you are positioned. It gives you a lot of tick throw setups that lead to wall break. I'll see if I can run them. Oops, I didn't run up. Yeah, so you can tick throw like that. You can tick throw after close slash. Oops. Oops. Oh my god. Alright, so you can see, I fumbled it, but you can tick throw there. Oh, there's an even better one. That's probably going to be your main one, because that's the most ambiguous. Because this is already like -3, but then it's actually you're plus, because the second hit of Pierce is hitting after it. So you're plus here, so you can easily run up, because they're going to be afraid of this, which is probably, since you're so plus, that actually is probably a frame trap in that situation. So they're going to be really spooked out, and now all of a sudden they got to deal with frame trap, 20 frame overhead starter, and they have to deal with run up throw. All of it leads to wall break. Very scary situation. So anytime you can double up, with spikes, it's a good idea. If your opponent is going to let you do that, if they're not an absolute maniac mashing on every string, then this is how you're going to open people up and get the big damage. Now, this is totally out of place. I'm sorry, guys, but I just remembered. I don't think I showcased the overhead starter for after 2K2D. So it's going to look something like this. And you can actually get a sandwich combo off of that. Now that's going to be in the 5H236P pressure. I just thought you guys would find that useful. Now, oh yeah, you can decide, you can make it same side too if you want to push to the wall. All you have to do is press back at the last possible second, right when dust is going to hit. Very useful setup. So you can go either way depending on how close you are to the wall. Now, if you're not near the corner and you aren't confident that you're going to be able to, you know, hit confirm all this like close slash dash K kind of stuff into meaningful setups, you can also go into cross up pressure off of close slash because it is jump cancelable. So this is what it would look like. So we've all seen that before. It really keeps your opponents on their toes because they're afraid of getting frame trapped here, right? So because they're afraid of getting frame trapped, it gives you the option to go for these fast cross-ups. Now you can convert all this pressure, like the sandwich K pressure, you can convert that into Oki with sword Oki as well. So I'll see if I can show that off a little bit. Yep, there you go. So you have enough time to dash this. And I got 2H, but you can do it into drill as well. And I believe it works for the overhead starter as well. Let me try it. Oops, I did frog. Oh, okay. Yep, so anytime you saw frog in any of those setups, you can always just cancel frog into that. Now, when they're that far away, this is another reason why you need dash macro. If you just dash like this, it's going to move Eddie behind them. But you want Eddie in front of them, right? Because you want to do sword Oki, okay? Then you want to run up, and you want Eddie to then hit them with this as they're waking up. So what you're going to do is you're going to do that. I hold down kick, okay? I press dash macro. Now, if you press dash macro, you can move forward and Eddie doesn't move. This is only possible in this game. But it makes these setups really nice because you can do that. And then you're going straight into your spikes setups. So all these spike setups that I just showed you, they work off of same side sword Oki. So it's the kind of thing, this comes up a lot when you hit your opponent on the last hit of the mix-up and you can't go into the side switch sword Oki. I'll just show you. See, I hit them on the second loop. And now all of a sudden they have to deal with your crazy high-low pressure. Now the only Eddie move left to cover is frog, the follow-ups for what happens when your opponent blocks frog. So now frog has the best coverage, but it also has the longest recovery of any of the Eddie moves. So I mainly use it after these long-range moves because it will hit whether they stand, crouch, or jump. It'll hit no matter what. Let me see if I can show you what it looks like on jump. So from max range this, it's pretty much going to cover all their options. You know, they can't really avoid it. And even if you cancel into it right away, you can basically always get into close slash range if they block it in the air. And if they block it on the ground, then at a minimum, you're going to be able to get in range. Now the thing about Frog is that because of its long recovery, you need to use 2 moves to wait for Eddie to be fully recovered before you can do another negative edge. Now this can be problematic at some ranges. Like for example, if you can't get into 2K range, then your only option for that is going to be 2S into Drill. Now the problem with that is that your opponent can just jump out, and Drill in this game actually just has a lot of recovery. So if your opponent jumped forward there, you're just dead. It sucks. So you really don't want to whiff Drill if your opponent knows that gap is there. So a lot of times, and I've mentioned this before, after this, Far Slash is a double hitting move. So you can run up and Far Slash, and then that will buy you enough time. Now you're kind of in this situation where you're holding down H and you can pressure your opponent. And you can threaten a pose. And you can threaten another Frog. You know, you got neutral options at least. Now if you can get into kick range, then you can do that. The only problem here is this goes into the other issue with Frog. It uses the most Eddie meter. So if you do Frog into spikes, then that uses 100% of your meter, because all 4 spikes uses 50% and Frog uses 50%. So what you have to do is anytime you use Frog, your next pressure sequence has to involve Pierce, right? So that just, you have to keep that in mind. So maybe you want to do something like this, and fill that Pierce gap. You know, if you can get away with it, you're gonna have to use Pierce there, and then now you just have to. It comes with all the, you know, trappings of dealing with the Pierce gap and all of that. Now, another important thing you need to know about Frog is it has a crouching dead zone wall. If you use it close enough, then they can crouch under it. So it's really mainly useful in situations where your opponent is spaced such that it will hit them crouching anyway, so that they can't just get a massive punish on you. Now, in the corner, Frog has some pretty interesting properties, okay? So say you do this, 5H, 236P kind of setup in the corner, and then now you can go for something like that, okay? Now, what you can do is you can cancel this. You can cancel this. Oops, oh my god. And you're plus on block. You can literally frame trap them with 2P, which is really nice. And on hit, if they get hit by this somehow, if they're standing or whatever, you have enough time to just combo them. In fact, you can just resummon Eddie. It refills your Eddie gauge, right? So, see, you can just resummon Eddie. Oh, and then this is yeah, it's actually really cool. So you can set up some interesting scenarios where you just like keep doing it, all right? Oh, well, let me make it so they don't get hit. Crouching. You know, you're doing that, and then you know, like you can really mix things up, right? When you're in the corner, because they don't know what happened. They just see you unsummon, but then you frame trap them, and they're like, what? And then you just summon Eddie again, and so yeah. You can do that. You can't keep doing it because your Eddie gauge doesn't refill instantly. So if you literally just do this as fast as you can, 2 punches into this, then you're not going to have quite a full Eddie gauge. So you can't just go back into this, and unsummon. By then it wouldn't work. But if your opponent just is blindsided and they don't know, and you can get them with like that into dash P or something, then yeah, you can loop it again and try again. Now that is kind of I would say that's the more niche application of this plus the Frog plus unblock stuff. Now it gets really scary when you cancel into this, okay? Because what you can do is now you have plus frames and an armored grab setup. So it looks like this. Oops. oh shit, right? So, like, you know, they're not gonna see it coming because they saw you like whiffing stuff, and they you know, they just finished blocking frog, and so they might start mashing, and if they jump that, right? So a very common thing, like, you know, the way you deal with run up throw, the thing that's in everyone's muscle memory is they jump and follow the button, right? Jump, follow the button. That's like your most standard punish. If you jump and then follow the button into a pose, it's just gonna eat it, and then it's exactly like if you got hit by the command grab. So it is a really good setup you can use in the corner. Catches hella people. Definitely something you want to be using with Zato. And probably the main reason why you would use frog in your setups over one of the other moves. Now that I've mentioned resummoning Eddie on block, I might as well go ahead and discuss the ways to use meter to resummon him on block. Very similar to the unsummon routes I kind of just showed you in application, where you're unsummoning frog in the corner and then you can frame trap with 6p, except for these let you do it in more situations. There you have to basically do that kind of setup immediately after your first mix-up like that, whereas these other setups can be a little bit more flexible. So one thing to note is that if your opponent ever blocks Sun Void in the corner on the ground, it frame traps into spikes. So literally getting them to block this from this range is just resummons Eddie at full, and then it comes with all the mix that you would have gone for before. You'd probably just run it to close slash range and go ahead and do all the stuff that I showed you previously. Now, the thing about it is Sun Void has quite a long recovery. In fact, if you like try to cancel something like this in the Sun Void, a lot of characters can just mash their punch or something to get out of it. And if they have a DP, any character with a DP can just DP here on reaction. Any character with an invincible super can just super there on reaction. So you can't just do it, right? What you can do is you can do it after spikes, and it'll be gapless after spikes. So a really common situation is, you know, you jump in. Oops, wow, I think I hit. You jump in, and then it pushes them to the corner like that. Now you want to get a mix up, but you don't have enough Eddie left. And then, now we can resummon Eddie and actually get a wall break off of that. And you saw how much risk the opponent built too. So if you somehow got a gold burst or something and you were able to do 2 rounds of that, then your next combo's really going to chunk them. If you manage to get wall break, then you're basically going to get 100% of your meter back as well. Now, if you are close to them, like if for whatever reason you're in a situation like this, you can run up and do Sun Void like this, and that is gapless into punch. I mistimed it, but imagine I time it correctly. So what you can do is you do punch, then pierce, then you plug pierce with 2K, and then now you're in exactly the same setup of all those other setups that I showed off of dash close slash. So that's a good way to restart pressure as well. The only problem is if you do all this right next to your opponent, they're probably just going to YRC you since you're right next to them, and they're in block stun basically the entire time. So I wouldn't necessarily go for that setup as much. Now, Gobo found another setup where you can basically you jump cancel close slash into downwards blue Roman cancel. So I'll see if I can get this set up. Yeah, there we go. So that causes the first hit of that spike to deal like an insane amount of block stun. And so you can unsummon after 1 spike. Let me see if I can get it right. There we go. And your opponent is going to be in so much block stun that you can literally just frame trap, or I think even gapless, straight back into close slash. So the application for this is it would be off of something like this. You go for one mix-up off of this, right? You can go, for example, here, you can go high like that. You can go low like that. And then now we say, okay, if he blocks the mix-up, then all I do is dash into close slash range and do the setup. Now the main application for this blue Roman cancel setup over the Sun Void setup is that it does not waste your meter gain. So what happens is anytime your opponent blocks a super or gets hit by it, or you use a super at all in a setup, it basically destroys your meter gain for basically the rest of the setup, the rest of the combo. You're not going to be able to build any meter. But after positive bonus, for example, like if you break the wall, then you're going to want to maximize your meter gain. So if you go for these metered unsummoned roots with blue Roman cancel, then what's going to happen is you're almost immediately going to start rebuilding your meter with your next setup. And you can build maybe like 3 whole bars of meter and be able to mix up the opponent over and over again and crank their risk gauge. So it is an option for if you manage to corner your opponent after a wall break. It can be kind of a really tricky thing to go into. Now the last thing I want to talk about is yellow Roman cancel baits. So this is going to be probably one of the most important aspects of learning Zato. I wouldn't worry about it at first just because it's going to use up too much of your mental bandwidth while you're learning all the rest of the level 1 stuff. But this is definitely what's going to separate the tournament level Zatos from the rest of the crop, is how well you're able to bait YRC, because Zato relies on mixing up off of his close slash and off of his 5P. Now, if your opponent just always YRCs close slash, in this game, YRC on hit is death. It's going to basically turn every single one of your mix-up opportunities into a situation where you're getting 50-50 strike throw every time you put them in the situation that is your win condition. So if you are unable to YRC bait in this game, pretty much the system mechanics are kind of against Zato's favor, because his win condition is completely negated by this mechanic. But on the other hand, they did give Zato a very good tool for baiting YRC, and if you manage to bait YRC, you can actually get really good return off of it. So this is going to be an important part of Zato's game plan. So the way you're going to bait YRC is you're going to cancel close slash or cancel 5P immediately into break the law. Now the way break the law works is the longer you stay down, the longer it takes for you to get back up. But YRC does not hit Eddie at all. So you can go down, Eddie can be out, and even if Eddie's right next to the opponent, YRC will not kill Eddie. So pretty much any of these setups where you are in close slash range, and that's the spot where your opponent's most likely to YRC you, because that's where the mix-up comes after that move. So anytime you're in close slash range, you can wait out. Remember how we were talking about these double up setups where you do close slash, you wait out his active frames, and then you do pierce? You can wait out the active frames while you're underground. So you can do something like this. Okay, and you can plug the pierce gap. You can come up quickly and plug the pierce gap mid-screen with 2Fs. Okay, so it's going to look like this. And if you see that the opponent is yellow Roman canceling, like you do this and you see the yellow Roman cancel flash, you just hold it down, you go into the exact same setup, and then that pierce into this move will combo. It'll combo, that'll combo into drill, and then you can get a frog after that and go into Sun Void Oki or Wall Splat. Now, it's more effective in the corner, because in the corner, you don't have to move forward. You can go down and come back up with your 2K. So you can go into the 2K dust kind of setup. So it'll look something like this. Oh my god. you see, you can go straight into that kind of mix from here. And again, if they yellow Roman cancel, then you just stay down, and you can combo, pierce into this, into this, into this, and it'll all lead to wall break. So that's a really good option. If you have them in the corner, you do something like this. It can be a really good option to bait out YRC like that. And you can see, top players get a lot of mileage out of close slash break the law setups. Now, the other time when you're liable to get YRC'd is when you're starting sandwich pressure. It all starts on 5P. Now, again, your opponent's just going to see you right next to you, be like, all right, and they're just going to yellow Roman cancel, and try to get a mix-up off of that. So what you can do is you actually have this, it's on the slower side, but you have this cross-up break the law setup you can do off of 5P that will bait yellow Roman cancel. like that. So it's pretty slow. I mean, so if your opponent's mashing or something or jumping, they'll get out of it. But to be fair, they're not going to mash out of this, right? Because you're threatening this, really fast low. So probably they'll let you get away with it. Now the thing about it is you have to use the 5P when you're pretty close to them, or else you're going to stay same side. So this is a pretty good way to bait YRC. And so it's pretty difficult to micro the opponent to do YRC at that point. So I'm not going to demo that. It's all on my Twitter. You can check out the setup there. But what you can do is if you're down here and you see them YRC, then you basically come up and counter hit close slash them into a full combo. I mean, it chunks them. So those two ways are going to be your main ways of baiting YRC. Other top players, they'll make it look like they're coming into close slash range, right? Because moves like this, they're in full block stun, so they don't actually have to wait for you to get to close slash. So, I've seen plays like Gobo, they'll do like this, they'll run up and do that, right, to try to stay YRC safe. There's lots of ways you can mix in different layers of stuff. The other way you can deal with YRC is, for example, they can't YRC something if the mix is the first hit, right? Because you have to be in block stun. If the first hit hits you, if you get hit by the first thing, then you can't YRC it, right? So like typically after Sun Void, typically after this Oki, we can go for this in the spikes and do our like gapless high-low mix. But what we can do instead is we can do this, right? And instead of the spikes that puts them in a gapless situation, we're just crossing them up on the first hit. And it also works after Sun Void Oki. Let me show that. Now, this does not meaty them, but, any self-respecting, human being isn't going to be jumping there if you land the, if you've meated them with that before, right? So you can set up lots of different situations where you are avoiding YRC. It's better to not put them in block stun, right? Than if they like YRCing you. Like, for example, here we have this kind of setup, but if they like to YRC, you can just run up grab, right? And off of grab, I don't know if I mentioned this, you can RC it. And that always leads to whatever wall break setup you've got. So that's like another main tool. The good thing about this is it always refills Eddie. So this is a really good combo starter if you have YRC. Basically completely burst safe in a lot of situations. And you can get a lot of mileage out of your command grab if you have YRC up. But yeah, so that's the main thing I think you should work on after you get the basics down, is just trying to play around YRC, play around burst. There's this awesome clip on Twitter. I think Macho was in like a last hit kind of situation during a tournament and like double baited YRC with close slash break the law. So it's definitely tried and true. You're gonna have the thing is, it's not an option. You're gonna have to do it if you want to learn how to play Zato. It's a huge part of his game plan. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover in this guide. I think I hit most of the main points, mostly talking about how to start pressure with Zato, not so much what you should be doing in neutral in each different scenario. I'm still learning the game too. I can't tell you, in this situation against this player, you're gonna want to prioritize this move, or that move. That's stuff that you guys are gonna have to find on your own by watching, pro players like Nokami and Gobo play, and see what works for them in different matchups, and just explore on your own. But the most important thing is that you understand the tools that Zato has and the different situations that he can put you in. Once you understand the properties and kind of usefulness of each of his different moves and setups, and where you can frame trap your opponent, where you can't, how you're going to be getting mixed, then all of a sudden, instead of it being this like totally nebulous, completely overcomable challenge, you can work on things bit by bit and figure out how you want to kind of Lego your own strategy together. You don't have to go for all these setups. In fact, against some characters like Axel, you're not gonna even be able to empty summon Eddie. There is no that's like one thing that I focus on a lot in this, and that you may not ever get the opportunity to do. You're always going to be just looking for small little spots where he's in recovery from a move, or where he blocked an anti-air or something like that, like 6P, where you can squeeze in an Eddie move and try to squeeze in a mix-up or two before he puts you back at full screen. So you're gonna have to work on your own game plan and your own strategy. But I think with everything I've mentioned in this guide, you should have all the tools to at least get started with Eddie, know what he's does, and not just be totally mindlessly, stringing random stuff together. This should help you get started. So, I'm glad to be a part of this. Labbing with Zato. This is actually the first time I've played Zato. I played, I think, Zato for 3 weeks in Plus R when Rollback came out, and that actually helped immensely. It helped me figure out how to do negative edge, and he had this thing called Mawara loops in Plus R, which is very similar to his side switch standard pressure here. So I would have never really thought to do that here if I hadn't seen it there. But it's been a fun experience, and I'm still learning just like everyone else. So just check me out on Twitter. I feel like I find something new just about every day, and as soon as I find it, I without hesitation put it straight up there. So if you want to figure out how to do all the different things you've seen me do here, definitely just dig through my Twitter. January on the Discord, put together a big Google Doc guide with, I think, most of the setups and notations there. You can check that out too. Definitely hit me up on Twitter, the Discord, and hopefully I'll be around for more content. I'm planning on maybe trying out streaming and YouTubing for a bit. I just started a new job and moved 3,000 miles away. So, I got a lot of other stuff going on, but I really do want to be involved with the FTC and keep doing what I'm doing. I have a lot of fun playing fighting games, and I'm sure you guys will see more of me. So, have fun playing Guilty Gear. I'm signing out.